The stink of moss and damp bark has become a kind of armor. 3 weeks in this ruined hunter's hut, and I can map it blind. The loose hinge that clicks if you breathe too close, the roof seam that leaks a thin silver thread whenever the sky weeps, the board near the hearth that complains like an old wolf. Night lays blue on the trees, and somewhere far off a chorus rises, wolves singing the moon-oath night into being. The claiming hunt. The word makes my stomach coil. I feed my mean little fire with pine cones and patience. Sparks jump, die, jump again. My reflection wobbles in the dented kettle, pale hair tangled to my shoulders, smoke-shadowed eyes, an omega who learned early that soft doesn't mean safe. My mother used to count strokes, 100, every night, murmuring that obedience keeps a girl alive inside a pack. But father is gone, and the beta she promised me to is a man who smiles like a trap closing. Around my throat hangs my one valuable thing, a brooch shaped like a thorn, forged of silver and set with a raindrop of cloudy glass. Grandmother's final gift. Trust what pulls true, she whispered, fingers warm on my pulse. I never traded it for bread. I never could. A twig snaps outside. All the night sounds fall away in the same heartbeat. No crickets, no nightjars. Only breath. Mine. The hut door holds its breath too. I pinch the flame out with a wet rag. Smoke threads up, then nothing. My fingers find the knife I hid in the crack behind the cradle rail. It's small, human, and laughable against an alpha. Still, steel has a way of making hands feel less empty. Footfalls approach, unhurried, heavy, certain. The scent hits before the shadow, rain on stone, oak bark after lightning, and something dark warm that sets heat low in me against my will. A single knock. I know you're awake, says a voice, deep and even, edged with command. Fear has a scent, little one. Every tale says yield when a king speaks. I press my spine to rough timber and do not move. Open, the voice continues, less a request than a tide. Or I pull it free. My hand moves before my courage does. The bar lifts. Hinges groan. Moonlight spills in around a man built like a doorframe, long dark hair gathered at his nape, shoulders broad, cloak trimmed in storm-black fur. His eyes, God's help me, hold a gold that is inhuman. Name, he says softly, as if we're already in the middle of something. Mine is Kael, Alpha of Northreach. Some insist I'm king. King. The word lands like a stone in a still pool, and the ripples do not end. He steps over the threshold as if the hut belongs to him, then stops, deliberately, leaving room for me to choose the next breath. It's nothing and everything at once. Most alphas fill space, this one shapes it. I'm not part of your court. I manage. My knife glints, his mouth tilts, not afraid. I'm no one's contract. Contracts are for cattle, he says, eyes taking in the guttering hearth, the blanket nest, the careful way I've disguised my scent with mud and mint. Our law, the law that remains, names mates, not property. Words, I say. Men use good ones before they do bad things. Something like amusement warms his gaze. Then test me, Omega. He inhales slow, the gold in his eyes brightens. You're masking a threat of stormbloom and snowmelt? Unusual. Your trail was clever. The moon oath raised every alpha within 100 miles to hunt. I came because yours cut through the rest. Because I smell like a meal? I ask, sharper than I intend. Because you smell like choice, he answers, and the word feels dangerous on his tongue. He shrugs the cloak off. Beneath, dark leather and steel lie like declarations across a body that doesn't need them. Scars ladder one forearm in a neat diagonal, evidence of battles he didn't brag about. He nods toward the brooch at my throat. Old work. Thorn forged. From whom? My grandmother. I don't know why I answer. She called it a keepsake. His attention flicks to it, and tightens. Respect. Wariness. Not just a trinket. Before I can ask what he knows, a howl razors the night, closer than comfort, bristling with triumph. Another follows, then 3. Kael's head turns the way a storm turns, all at once. South Pack, he says. Dorian's lot. The name sinks iron into my gut. Dorian of Ashfell. The beta mother promised me to with a purse handshake and a prayer I wouldn't hear. Brutal man. Pretty speeches. Hands like shackles. He won't cross a king's border. I say, but my voice doesn't believe it. Kael's smile shows a sliver of fong. He already has. He masked his stink with rosemary and ash. A growl lives under his words. I told every alpha, Northreach is closed tonight. He tests me anyway. He moves to the doorway, rolls his shoulders once. Something roils beneath his skin and settles. Control like iron. You have two paths, Mira. He says my name as if he pulled it from my chest without hurting me. I should be angry. I am not. Path 1, I bar this door, hold the threshold, and at Moon Peak the oath ends. No claim takes you until next cycle. Path 2, we use old law, your law older than mine. The right of choice. If you speak it, no hand touches you without your say, not this moon, not any. How? My throat is dry as tinder. He gestures to the brooch. If that is what I think, it will answer. But it answers only truth. The hulls stack like spears outside. Kael doesn't look back at me. He doesn't rush me either. He stands, king still, and waits. For me. The hut has never been quiet in this way, a tight, vibrating silence that makes each breath a benchmark. Dorian's wolves ring the clearing. I can feel their movement in the floorboards, in the beats of my heart. I won't be bartered, I say, mouth raw around the words. Not to him. Not to anyone who thinks Omega means door. Good, Kael says simply. I step into moonlight. The brooch warms. Its cloudy drop clears, silver flecks rising like shaken stars. Grandmother taught me a little of old names, the way the forest answers if you ask with respect, the way water stills if you stop looking at yourself and listen. But this is different. The warmth hums into my bones, and a phrase arrives whole, the way thunder arrives, by thorn and thread, by moon and marrow. I name my will. I claim the right of choice. I say, and the words are not a shout, not a plea. They are a bell struck clean. The clearing answers. Wolves skid. Hackles lift. Even the night seems to lean close. Kael's eyes flare brighter, and for a fraction of a second something like relief shows in the lines at his mouth. Then Dorian steps from the birches. Half shifted, all arrogance, he grins with too many teeth. There she is. The pretty little promise. His gaze slides to the king, mocking. Northreach breeds fancy myths, choice, rights, consent. But the oath says unclaimed are fair prey till the peak. It also says no prey on another alpha's ground. Kael replies, voice mild as frost and just as lethal. You've forgotten how to read. Dorian gestures, and 4 wolves fan out. Read this. Kael moves. I have seen storms roll in over the high moors, blue-black and full of iron, swallowing a horizon in a single breath. That is how he moves, direct, decisive, zero-wasted motion. 2 wolves down before their paws find purchase. The third meets him midair and crumples. The fourth falls back, uncertain. Kael doesn't chase. He holds the ring. He is not showy. He is efficient. Dorian laughs. King tricks. Tricks fail when numbers swell. My knife looks very human in my hand. My fear feels very human in my chest. But the brooch burns steady as a watchfire. I lift my chin. Dorian of Ashfell, I say, and his name tastes like metal. Hear me. His eyes cut to mine, annoyed, then startled. The air seems to warp a degree, the way heat shimmers above stone. The wolves pause, confused. I don't know what I'm doing until it's done. It's like stepping into a song I've known for years but never sung aloud. Sound braids with will. You will not touch me. Power doesn't crack or blaze. It settles. The clearing loosens. A dozen yellow eyes dim. Kael's head turns, a fraction, toward me. Respect again. And something more dangerous. Dorian snarls and launches anyway. Kael meets him halfway. They hit hard enough to make the hut jump. Claw, fang, knuckle, earth. Dorian is flash and fury, Kael is weight and weather. The fight eats distance, rips moss, knocks bark off birch. Every time Dorian feints toward me, Kael is there. No wasted reach, no messiah theatrics, just a clean, merciless refusal. Call him off. Dorian spits between strikes. You invoked fancy rights. Hide behind them. Rights aren't hiding, I say, even as my pulse stumbles. Their shape. Dorian's laugh sputters into a snarl. He rakes Kael's shoulder, blood beads, bright and clean. Kael doesn't flinch. He drives Dorian back with a shove that looks almost bored. Moon is near peak. Kael notes, voice steady. You're done. Not till I mark her. Dorian snaps, and that is his mistake. In old law, intent matters. Grandmother's stories said so, voice sweet and sly over nettle tea. If a wolf declares harm under oath's sky, the sky hears. The brooch flares cold against my skin, then hot. The cloudy drop clears entirely. I don't think. I remember. Moon witness. I whisper, the way one whispers to embers. And end this claim. Silver runs from the brooch to my palm like liquid thread. It doesn't burn. It binds. I raise my hand. The thread arcs to the space between the two alphas and hangs there, humming. Dorian freezes, eyes wide. Kael halts, not because he must, I think, but because he chooses to honor the old thing I've called. The right of choice is named, I say, and my voice is mine and not mine, my grandmother's and not hers. No hand may force, no tooth may take. The oath is shut. The hum fades. Night rushes in like breath returning after a long hold. Somewhere, an owl remembers its business and goes to it. In the sudden ordinary, Dorian looks smaller. He bears torn gums anyway. You're making kings where you should be making mates, he tells Kael, hate bright as fever. You'll pay in blood when the old ways wake. Kael regards him with a quiet I do not envy. The old ways are not your violence dressed up as tradition. Boots crack brush to my right. More bodies? No, the scent is clean, herb sweet, familiar in a way that folds my knees. A woman steps from the dark, older, straight-backed, her hair braided with winter-white threads. Around her throat sits a simple choker of hammered silver. Her gaze moves from Kael to me and warms, astonishingly. Queen Mother. Dorian scoffs, though I hear the fear under it. Sarah. Come to scold your son? Sarah's smile is a thin blade. I came because the forest asked. Her eyes find my brooch. Something like recognition rings between us. And because a thorn forge sang. She faces Dorian last, as if he were an afterthought, not a threat. Take your wounded and crawl, she says. The moon oath peaks. Next step you take on Northreach soil is treason, not hunt. Dorian holds Kael's eyes too long. Hatred writes a promise. Then he spits on the moss, jerks his head. Ashfell wolves drag each other into the birch shadows and are gone. Only when they are truly gone do my legs remember how to shake. Sarah reaches me first. Her palms are cool and sure, her scent clean as meadow smoke. Easy, she says, and I do not know how she knows my name until she says it. Mira. Hearing it in her mouth feels like balm. Kael watches us both with an expression I can't read, a king cataloging harm, a man counting breaths. You invoke thorn law, Sarah says, turning the brooch in her fingers without unpinning it. What did you learn? My grandmother, I answer. She called it a keepsake. She died before she could finish the teaching. Sarah hums, low, satisfied. She taught enough. Thorn forged belongs to the Veil Singer's line. Rare gift. Rarer since men forgot how to be taught. Veil Singer? I echo. Kael's eyes lift a fraction. I wondered, he murmurs. Sarah gestures toward the hut. Fire first. Then names and meaning. Kael sets the hearth with the same ruthless efficiency he used on Dorian, wood stacked where flame once, spark coaxed, smoke pulled. He moves the way a river decides where a bank will be. The sight settles something in me I didn't know was jangling. Dorian won't honor the peak, I say when heat licks life back into my fingers. He'll circle. He'll wait for any edge. He'll try. Kael agrees, binding his shoulder with a tidy strip of linen he tears with his teeth. He knots it one-handed. But he won't try here, not tonight. Sarah pours nettle into cups and a steadier heartbeat into the room. We taught the old words to men who deserved them, she says, eyes on the steam. Then most forgot. Some perverted them. Veil singers spoke for balance, human and wolf, alpha and omega, king and common. Not rulers. And here she flicks Kael a warning, fond and sharp at once. Counterweights. I didn't. Kael begins. You didn't. She agrees, smiling. You invited, you didn't claim. Good. Keep doing that. He inclines his head. It isn't theater, it's respect. The sight upends me a little. I've only known alphas who bow only to mirrors. Sarah turns back to me. The thorn line passed mother to daughter across centuries. Sometimes skipping a generation. Sometimes sleeping. Your brooch woke because you told the truth out loud. Thorn law hates lies. Will it keep doing that? I ask. Answer, I mean. It will answer you if you answer yourself, Sarah says. That's the infuriating grace of it. She sets her cup down. Northreach can shelter you while you learn. Kael has made space for women to say no without bleeding for it. For omegas to be more than a hearth. Some say too much space, Kael says dryly. They prefer their control simple. And empty, Sarah says. I look between them, a king and his mother, an omega who may not be only that, a brooch that isn't only pretty. The hut feels smaller because the world outside it just grew. I don't want to be anyone's promise, I say. Not to a man, not to a prophecy. But I'm tired of running. Kael's reply is quiet. Then don't. Walk to what you choose. We can be that road, not a rope. Sarah's smile is a hearth repaired. There's a guest house an hour north, Mira. Clean sheets, a door that locks, a window that opens. In the morning, choices will still be there. Outside, the moon oath peaks and passes. The wolves sing the end of it like a benediction. For the first time in weeks, I believe dawn belongs to me. Dawn granulates the woods into green and gold. We leave the hut without looking back. Some places are only good because they kept you alive, not because they kept you whole. Kael sets a steady pace along a hunter's track that's older than all our arguments. Sarah glides between birches like a prayer too practical to write down. Why did you become king? I ask finally. The forest is honest enough to hold the question. Kael considers, then answers like someone who refuses to lie by omission. Because someone had to end men who called abuse tradition. Because my father fell ill with a mind sickness, and the pack learned fear as a first language. Because I watched good wolves become small to survive, and I wanted sons and daughters who didn't learn to fold to be loved. It's not the story I expected. It is better. And because you're strong. I add, because truth wears all its parts or it isn't truth. His mouth tilts. And that. We crest a low ridge. Northreach spills below, a city ribbed with stone and stitched with rivers, banners lifting like breaths, the long keep throwing sunlight like a shield. It is older than my fear. It is younger than what I might become. Sarah touches my elbow. When we reach the house of fog, my cottage, food, sleep, and then we read your thorn. That brooch holds a history. Veil singers record in metal, not ink. How do you read metal? I ask. Like you read a scar. She says simply. By what it refuses to forget. A hawk wheels. Far off, a bell. Closer, the steady pad of 3 sets of feet who chose the same path at the same time. Kael slows. Before we pass inside walls, one question. His voice finds that even place between command and care. Do you want your name spoken as a veil singer at court? It brings status and target in the same mouthful. I could hide. I have practice. I could pretend to be nobody until I learned to be somebody with fewer sharp edges. But every time I picture Dorian's grin, I feel something old rise, thorn and thread, moon and marrow, and I am done being shaped by men who fear a woman with a word. Say it. I tell the king. Say who I am. Something unguarded lights his face, pride or gratitude or both, and is gone as quickly as a fox into bracken. Then Northreach will hear. We take the last switch back together. The city opens its gates, not like a mouth, but like a pair of hands. The road inside smells of bread, iron, river, and the kind of hope that scares cowards. I lift a hand to the brooch. It hums once, soft as agreement. I am not done being afraid. I am done being hunted. Northreach's walls are not teeth, as I feared, but ribs, built to shelter what grows. We pass under the gate and into morning bustle. Market callers braid with the river's shush, apprentices shoulder bundles, a pair of pups, wolf children just past toddling, chase each other until their nurse whistles a warning that sounds suspiciously like a bird. No one bows as Kael, their alpha king, walks by. They nod. A small thing. A huge thing. Sarah peels away toward a street edged in herb stalls. House of Fogs this way, she says. You too, announce what needs announcing, then come hungry. Bossy, Kael murmurs, fond enough to soften steel. Effective, Sarah corrects, and vanishes into the perfume of time and river-wet stone. The keep rises at the city's heart, old bones wrapped in newer glass, sun pooled in the atrium like warm milk. Within, wolves and men move together, scribes with ink-stained fingers, guards with spears but not postures that threaten, a courier with mud to his knees who grins at Kael and receives a grin back, quick and unadorned. My chest does a small, traitorous easing. Breathe, Kael says, as if he heard the hinge unlatch inside me. Court feels larger than it is when the first door shuts behind you. We climb a stair he takes two at a time when he's not thinking. He slows to match me without comment. At the landing stands a woman in lapis and leather, her hair braided close to the scalp, a scar cutting the brow like a blue thread. She smells like ink and pine smoke. High Seneschal Bryn, Kael says. This is Mira. Today we speak her name as Veil Singer. Bryn's eyes measure me, not unkindly. The measurement is for fit, not fault. Welcome, Mira, she says, and the word lands solid. Rooms readied in the royal wing. Sarah sent word from the gate. Of course she did. A bell peals, twice, some inner mechanism of court I don't yet understand. Bryn's mouth quirks. Assembly already stirred by the Ashfell trespass. Her gaze flicks to Kael's bound shoulder. And by someone's morning exercise. Dorian bites worse than he thinks, Kael says. But less than he brags. Good, Bryn replies. We've a surfeit of brag. We cross the threshold into a hall of light. Banners hang, not of conquered names, but of the rivers and ranges that hold the realm together. People turn, voices dim. I feel the moment the king's gravity catches the room. I also feel the way he refuses to use it like a cudgel. He steps onto the dais and does not stand center. He leaves a space at his right. A place for a counterweight. Mira, he says quietly. With me if you wish. The brooch hums yes against my pulse. I step into the light. Northreach, Kael says, and it is not a shout, it is a steadying. Before we speak of trespass and teeth, you must hear a name that belongs to you as much as it belongs to her. Mira of Thornforge, blood of the Veil Singers. The hall inhales. A word ripples the crowd. Singers? Like fish turning under a single sunbeam. Bryn doesn't flinch. She lifts a staff and thumps once. The sound walks the rafters. Old Lord recognizes a Veil Singer. She recites, voice ringing. Human heart speaking for wolf and man alike. Counter oath to the moon oath. Balance against hunger. Who disputes? A few heads twist, hungry for a reason to growl. Most simply listen. Sarah appears like a rumor becoming a fact at the back of the room, arms folded, pleased and dangerous. Kael tilts his head toward me. It would be easier if he handed me a script. He does not. He leaves me the width of a breath and the length of a life to choose. My grandmother called me stubborn for the right things, I say, and the hall gives a short, startled chuckle. I ran from being bartered as an omega like a sack of grain. I do not run from this, from speaking when speaking keeps teeth from closing on throats. If your Alpha King asks for a counterweight, I'll be it. If he forgets to ask, I'll be louder. That gets a longer sound, less laughter than relief. I feel it pass through the hall like a wind that blows dust out from under beds. Even the ones who don't like the idea understand its honesty. A man steps forward from the cluster wearing ash fell gray. He is wide in the shoulders, narrow in the mouth. His scent is cedar shavings and cheap wine. I am Vor, he declares. Ashfell's envoy. Our beta, says the king overreached. The moon oath grants hunt rights on unclaimed omegas till peak. Your new counterweight tricked the law with old silver. Bryn's eyebrows climb so slowly it feels like art. We do enjoy poetry when we hear it. That wasn't it. Before she can fillet him, I speak. Your beta crossed a boundary marked with words and with warning. He massed his scent and brought numbers. He declared intention to force. Old law and new agree on this. A claim without consent is not a claim. It is a wound. I closed it. Vor sneers. Pretty speech from prey. I swallow the urge to show him how prey can carry knives. Kael doesn't swallow anything. He merely turns his head. Every guard in the hall shifts weight. It is not threat. It is arithmetic. Your Alpha, Kael says evenly, is summoned to account for trespass and attempted forced mark. Send him this. Northreach holds its borders. Northreach holds old law and new. Northreach will receive Ashfell in good faith if Ashfell comes with it. Vor opens his mouth, then notices Bryn's eyes and decides living to report might be a better hobby. He bows too shallow and stalks out, trailed by the kind of silence that refuses to follow him home. Kael looks at me, not past me. Sarah will teach you what the thorn remembers, he says for the court to hear. Bryn will seat you on the right when we weigh law and river and bread. Northreach adds a voice, not a leash. Some would prefer the leash. A voice calls from the benches. I find the speaker, a sleek woman with a braid like a whip and a gaze like a polished blade. She smells of iron and frost. She does not bother to hide her disdain. Who speaks when a singer and a king disagree? I do, I say. So do I, Kael says. We grin at each other like idiots, and her scorn ripens. Bryn thumps the staff again. And I, she adds pleasantly. It's called conversation. The hall, against its own habits, laughs. Someone exhales like they've been holding air for a decade. Assembly stands adjourned. Bryn declares. Council at third bell. Anyone tempted to make trouble before that may apply at the gatehouse for permission slips. She deadpans it so perfectly that even the guards smirk. Kael leans close as the room stirs. You were more than steady, he says, voice a private warmth in the public space. You were true. So were you, I answer. You left me a space. That's the trick, he says. Leave one, and a good thing will step into it. I pretend my heart doesn't trip. The royal wing doesn't glitter. It breathes. Rooms with windows placed where light falls like a habit, floors scratched by lives that dare to walk barefoot, shelves that know how to hold a book and a memory at the same time. Bryn shows me to a chamber whose bed looks like it has opinions about sleep and whose bath steams politely. Clothes will arrive, she says, not waiting for thanks. Eat everything Sarah sends. Avoid everyone who spits when they say change. If you get lost, follow a cat. Cats know. Is that official advice? I ask. At this court? As official as any, she says, and leaves before I can decide whether to laugh. Sarah materializes with a tray carrying more bowls than I have hands and a loaf that has me reconsidering my cautious stance on love. Eat. Then we teach. I eat. It becomes a verb large enough to stand alone. When I can think again, Sarah lights a small gray candle, seats me by the window, and sets the brooch in my palm. Close your eyes, she says. Think of iron singing. Don't force. Let it come. Let what come? The part of you that remembers what you haven't learned, she says simply. I close my eyes. The brooch warms, then cools, then, strangely, softens, as if the metal remembers being or remembers weight before edge. Voices rise, the market's thread, river on stone, a far-off argument about carpenters, the world's small choir. Beneath it, a hum that belongs only to the thorn. I fall toward it the way a person falls toward a bed after a week on the road. Flash. Hands on mine, older, clever. Grandmother's laugh. Not truth as club, little hawk. Truth as bridge. Flash. A ring of wolves and women around a winter fire. The Alpha, King, listens while a singer speaks and does not interrupt even to agree. Balance isn't immaculate. It's argued into being and then argued again. Flash. A word not in any book, intertwined. The way threads cross and hold when the cloth is asked to carry weight. The thorn wasn't made to stab. It was forged to stitch things that want to tear. I open my eyes on a room that hasn't moved. Sarah is watching me with a pride that makes something ache in my sternum. Well? She asks. It's not a weapon, I say, voice hushed. It's a needle. Exactly, she says, and presses my fingers closed over the brooch. And you, Mira, Omega, woman, thorn line, are not a blade to swing when men scare you. You're the hand that mends us when we scare ourselves. A knock at the door steals the moment. Bryn steps in without apology. Scouts, she says, the word clipped to news. Ash fell wolves moving east of the river in 2s and 3s. Not hunting. Looking. For what? I ask, though the cold answer is already climbing my spine. For a ritualist, Bryn says. Or for a singer. Either gets them the same door. Sarah's mouth turns grim. We don't let them find either. Kael fills the doorway a breath later, rain on his shoulder like he grew weather. We move at dusk, he says. I want your eyes, Mira. And your needle. He doesn't flinch from the new word. He makes room for it. Dusk, I say, and the brooch hums yes against my pulse. North reaches dusk tastes like copper and wet rope. We gather at the east gate, Kael in travel leathers and a cloak that refuses to be anything but a shadow, Bryn with a bow, Sarah with a satchel that clinks like she packed a kitchen and a war. 2 scouts whose names I do not catch because their scents say quiet and their eyes say counting. And me, a human Omega with a piece of moonsung metal and a heart that keeps getting larger without asking my permission. We slip along the river path, reeds brushing our boots, lamps banked low along the wall behind. The scouts peel off without words, returning in hand signs learned from trees. 2 watchers at the ferry, 1 at the mill, 1 sent at the stone bridge that should smell of trout but smells of ash. Kael gestures. We goes to the bridge. Ash clings to the keystone like a bruise. A circle has been drawn, charcoal, salt, old blood. Not enough to bind, just enough to call. Symbols I don't know hum ugly. A scrap of cloth lies tucked into a crack, gray wool, the cheap dye Ash fell favors for uniforms. What do you see? Kael asks, not to test me, but to give me the floor. I kneel. The brooch's cool weight steadies my hands. A feeler. Whoever made it wanted to taste who crosses, Alpha, Omega, or other. The thorn warms. The symbols swim into sense. It listens for a singer and tells whoever's holding the other end of the string. How far does the string run? Bryn asks. As far as the ritualist dares, Sarah says. Cowards like distance. Can you sew it shut? Kael asks, and the trust inside the question nearly undoes me. Yes, I say, because the needle in my palm is humming the way a needle hums when thread is exactly the right size. I close my eyes, touch voice to metal, and remember the word that felt like a bridge. Intertwined. I picture the circle as a tear in fabric. I picture the river, the city, the way a pack learns to be more than hunger. I push a thin thread of silver through the ash and salt and blood, not erasing it, not exploding it, but reweaving it into road dust and fish and the patience of stone. The circle sighs. The call dies. When I open my eyes, the symbols are plain chalk smears. The air tastes like river again. Bryn lets out a breath she may have been holding since she learned to stand. Useful needle, she says. Useful hand, Sarah corrects. Kael's gaze finds mine and holds. They'll try again. Somewhere else. We'll hunt their lines and knot them until they choke on slack. We move. At the ferry, another circle. At the mill, one half drawn as if the hand that wrote it panicked and fled. At the willow bend, nothing visible, but the brooch hums and finds a thin line running under the mud like a snake. I stitch. I knot. I unmake what would make me an object. At the lowest ford, we find the hand. He is young. Too young for the cold in his eyes. He crouches over a circle so tight it would have caught a heart and wrung it dry. His fingers shake. His mouth is set. Don't run, Bryn says softly as a drawn bow. He runs. Kael is a wall that was a man, then a river, then a hand closing over a wrist. He doesn't hurt the boy. He simply reintroduces him to stopping. Name, Kael says. Lou, the boy stammers. I didn't, I mean, Dorian said. Dorian says many things, Bryn murmurs. Few of them good. I crouch, meet Lou's eyes, and wish someone had met mine like this when I was younger and scared and pretending I wasn't. Lou, I say. What were you told to do? He swallows. His scent spikes bitter with fear. Find the singer. His gaze flicks to my brooch and back. Mark her. The Alpha, our Alpha. He said the king would parade her and that we should fix a tether. He said it was old law. It is not, Sarah says, so gently the boy flinches. It is theft dressed up as memory. I open my palm so he can see the thorn. I stitch your circles shut. He looks at the ground like a child caught stealing bread and finding he's stolen a stone instead. Will he kill me for failing? He whispers. Who? Bryn asks. Your beta? Not if you stop working for him. Lou starts to cry, angry at the crying. He has my sister. He promised her a match with a merchant if I... His breath breaks. He swipes his face with the back of his hand. If I delivered the tether. Kael's gaze goes winter cold, not at the boy, never at the boy. Ashfell moves from rot to ransom, he says quietly. We end both. And start here, Sarah adds. Where is she kept? Lou points, a shaking finger drawing a line through the dark. Old Quarry Road. The smokehouse. They said it was empty, but it isn't. Nothing empty where men make girls into bargains. Good, Bryn says, voice like a drawn string. We love directions. Kael releases Lou's wrist but not the boy. You walk with us, he says, gentler. You're safer inside the trouble than outside it tonight. Lou nods, breaks, mends in the same breath. We turn our feet toward the smokehouse and whatever waits there with knives named custom. The quarry road remembers weight. Caravans once creaked here, wheels grumbling. Now foxes own the ditches and moonlight coins the ruts. The smokehouse squats where the road kinks, low and wide, stone blackened and door hung crooked. No smoke. Too much silence. Bryn touches the latch and shakes her head. Wire, bell, crude alarm. Sarah taps the lintel, listens, nods to a knot none of us can see. 3 men inside, she whispers. 1 girl. A 4th outside back wall. Kael's eyes cut to me. Ask? Or stay? A king who can split a door with his shoulder weights on a human Omega's choice. Let me go first, I hear myself say. Your face starts fights. Mine ends some. Some, Bryn echoes. Good word. Kael's jaw works once. You don't go alone. I don't. I agree, and slide the brooch free of its pin. The thorn gleams dull moon as if pleased to be useful. I step into the doorway's shadow and knock. Not timid. Not bold. Human. Scraping inside. A man's laugh that's learned to hate its own owner. The door jerks. A face, unshaven, eyes bloodshot, fills the crack. He opens wider when he sees me, of course he does, and the wire bell jangles. Lost, sweetheart? He drawls, already reaching. I am, I say, and hold his gaze as if it were a thread. Help me. Men like this are suckers for the lie that makes them heroes in their own heads. His hand curls into a shepherd's parody. Well now. Kael's hand goes from shadow, clamps the man's mouth, and tips him into sleep against the jamb like blowing out a candle. Bryn is already inside, a whisper with a bow. Sarah slides left along the wall, her knife so small the dark blushes to see it. I step in last and catch the girl's eyes. She is 12, maybe 13, rope at her wrists, fury at her mouth. She bites the gag free like it insulted her and spits. About time, she hisses. I like her immediately. The other two men scramble. One makes it to a knife. Bryn uses a word I want to learn that appears to mean, fall down. He obeys. The last bolts for the back, finds Sarah, decides not to do anything ever again tonight. Outside, a muffled thud means the fourth learned a quiet lesson from a patient alpha. I cut the ropes. The girl rubs her wrists rawer, because anger needs something to do with its hands before it can stand still. Lou? She snaps. Bree, Lou says from the door, voice cracked open. She rounds on him with a look I've seen in river mirrors. Love dressed as a scold. You great fool, she says, and folds him into her shoulders so hard my throat hurts to watch. Kael scans the corners, cataloging shadows until none dare to be suspicious. Bryn finds a ledger on a peg and raises both eyebrows to the ceiling. Sarah reads over her shoulder and makes a small, lethal sound. They sold places, Sarah says softly. Slots for girls who didn't agree to be goods. Names, prices, promises, lies. Dorian will swear ignorance, Bryn says, flicking the pages. He'll burn this ledger tomorrow and call it cleansing. He won't, Kael replies, voice iron. Because we're taking it now. He tucks it under his arm as if it were any book. The gesture is obscene and perfect, a king carrying proof like groceries. Home, I say to Bree. Both of you. She lifts her chin. He made Lou do it. The circles. He said he'd. I know, I say. We cut the string. She peers at the brooch, eyes narrowing. That little thing? Looks like trouble. It is, I say. The good kind? The road back is shorter because we aren't alone. By the time the gate swallows us again, night is thinning. Cats own the alleys. A baker yawns flour into the air and doesn't know he's a priest. Bryn peels off toward the records with the ledger, smiling like someone who has found the right hammer at last. Sarah shepherds Lou and Bree toward the house of fog with the sideways tenderness of a woman who has built 1,000 safe mornings out of broken midnights. I find myself walking beside Kael, our shadows braided as one would weave two cords to carry more weight. He is quiet. Not the quiet of a man hiding thoughts. The quiet of one setting them in labeled jars. You left me the door, I say, because the silence deserves words. I did, he answers. You walked through it. I was afraid. Good. Fear minds the edges. We reach a small courtyard where a fountain gossips to itself. He stops beside it and studies the water as if it might study him back. I have changed law, he says. I have moved borders. But I cannot touch what a singer can. I can break a circle, you can turn it into rope. Rope ties, I say. Rope also rescues, he replies. Depends who holds it and whether they asked first. We stand there, ankle deep in a tired night, and let the fountain think we're listening. He turns then, and I feel the moment we both step closer without moving our feet. I know the stories that get told about an alpha king, he says. About need dressed as destiny. I won't throw those at you. I will tell you this. Since the forest, your scent has been the one I use to check if I'm still the man I claim I am. I don't mean to laugh. The laugh comes anyway, small and shameless. That's terribly poetic for someone who says he doesn't do speeches. Don't spread it, he says. I have a reputation for being a fence post. You're a river, I say before I can stop it. You go where the land needs water. Something unguarded opens in his face, quick as a door left ajar to let heat through. He doesn't touch me. He doesn't have to. The space between us hums like a string tuned to a note we both finally name. He steps back first, which is the bravest thing. Sleep, he says, softer than any command. Tomorrow we read what your thorn remembers. Tomorrow we put Ashfell in the light. Tomorrow we start telling the city a true story. And the day after? I ask, because I am tired of pretending I don't want to know if we get more days. The day after, he says, we keep choosing. King and singer. Alpha and Omega. Needle and hand. Every day after is only that, done again. He leaves me at my door with a bow so small only the brooch sees it. The bed catches me like an old friend I forgot to forgive. I sleep without dreaming until the sun lifts its face over Northreach and calls me by a name I am learning to claim. I wake with my palm closed around the thorn and the sense of being on the lip of a thing that could be a fall or a flight, depending on whether I remember to make wings on the way down. Morning rolls in soft as milk over stone. The city hums awake beneath my window, wagons groaning, bread carts rattling, crows announcing gossip they don't understand. For the first time in months, I wake not to the sharp ache of running but to the slower, stranger ache of staying. The brooch lies on the bedside table, its silver thread catching sunlight. It glows faintly, as though pleased with my decision. I trace the thorn's edges and feel it pulse once beneath my fingertips, a heartbeat answering mine. A knock interrupts the quiet. Enter, I call, tugging the blanket higher. Sarah's head appears first, followed by the scent of sage tea. Breakfast, she says briskly, setting down a tray that looks like a still life, fruit, bread, and something that could convert a skeptic to porridge. Eat then dress. Bryn wants you in the war room before the second bell. War room? I ask, rubbing sleep from my eyes. Do not let the name frighten you, Sarah replies. It's mostly maps and arguing. As if summoned by the word arguing, Bryn strides in a moment later, cloak snapping like punctuation. Morning, Thorn Hand? Ready to meet half the realm's loudest opinions? I suppose so, I say, though my stomach disagrees. Bryn grins. Good. Confidence looks better when it's nervous underneath. Keeps people listening. The war room is less a battlefield and more a cathedral of decisions, vaulted ceilings, sunlight cutting across a map the size of a small lake, ink stains like old wounds. Kael stands at the far end, sleeves rolled, head bent over a parchment. He looks up when we enter, and something warm flickers behind his golden eyes. Mira, he greets, simple and steady. Good. We can begin. Around the table are a dozen figures, captains, advisors, a scholar whose spectacles magnify his astonishment every time someone says magic. Bryn takes her place beside Kael, Sarah beside me. Kael gestures to the map, where thin red lines stretch like veins from Ashfell toward the north. These are the reports from last night's scouts. The circles Mira unmade were part of a net. Each was meant to track her, or anyone with the thorn's power. Why so many? I ask. To weave a calling, Sarah answers grimly. A ritual needs repetition. The more threads, the louder the call. Kael nods. And the more dangerous the echo. If they tried to summon what Mara became, they may already be courting disaster. At her name, the room chills. Mara, the alpha who severed her humanity. Her image still lurks in my dreams. We stop them by cutting the pattern entirely. Kael continues. Which means traveling beyond Ashfell's border. The scholar sputters. That's war. No. Kael corrects calmly. That's prevention. He looks to me. You're the only one who can close the thread permanently. Will you come? Every eye turns my way. I remember the forest, the blood moon, the helplessness that nearly drowned me. And I remember how the brooch burned, how my voice made predators listen. Yes, I say. I'll go. Sarah's hand finds mine under the table, pride, and fear. Then we prepare, she murmurs. We leave at dusk, again, Kael, Bryn, 2 scouts, and me. Sarah stays behind to protect the city. Needles travel light, she tells me, pressing a pouch of herbs into my hand. But they never travel unguarded. Keep this close. The road curls through pine and shadow. Northreach fades behind us until its lights are only stars that forgot their names. The air grows colder, sharper, full of resin and memory. Kael walks beside me, silent for a long stretch. Then, "You've changed the court." I blink. "Already?" He half smiles. "The council argues less about whether Omega should speak and more about what you'll say next." "Progress." I snort. "Or fear." "Sometimes the same thing," he replies. The path narrows between cliffs. The river below snarls softly. We stop to make camp near an old watchtower, roof gone, stones mossed. Bryn takes first watch. Kael and I sit by the fire, sharing warmth more out of necessity than design, or so I tell myself. "Tomorrow we reach the border," he says, feeding the fire a stick. "Beyond that ash fell." "And Dorian," I say quietly. Kael nods, gaze fixed on the flames. "And what waits behind him?" The night stretches, full of what-ifs and could-bes. I fall asleep listening to the rhythm of his breathing, steady as the heart of the world. Morning smashes through the sky in gold and wind. We break camp and head down the ridge. The forest thickens, old-growth trees twisted like ancient thoughts. My brooch hums faintly, warning or welcome, I can't tell which. Bryn raises a hand, signaling stop. Ahead, the path forks, one trail wide and worn, the other narrow, overgrown. The scouts exchange looks. "Tracks," one murmurs. "Fresh." Kael kneels, fingertips brushing the dirt. "Ash-fell boots. Too many for a hunting party." I step closer, heart thudding. "A patrol? Or bait?" Bryn mutters. Kael straightens. "Either way, we follow. Carefully." The narrow path leads us to a hollow ringed with stones. In its center stands a crude altar, ash-stained, symbols burned into the wood. The air smells wrong, metallic and sweet. My brooch burns hot. "They've begun another ritual," I whisper. Kael moves beside me, jaw tight. "Can you unmake it?" I nod, though the heat biting my palm says the cost will be higher this time. "Cover me." Kneeling, I press the thorn to the altar. Power crackles, not bright but heavy, like thunder underwater. The symbols twist, fighting the undoing. I whisper the old word again, intertwined. Something answers, not gentle. A voice like Mara's but colder, echoing through the trees, "You cannot stitch what was meant to tear." The ground shudders. The altar splits, spilling black smoke that rides like snakes. Kael hauls me back as the fire flares white. "Run!" Bryn shouts. We dive behind a fallen tree as the hollow explodes in a shower of ash. When the smoke clears, the altar is gone. So is the narrow path. "Trap," Kael mutters, helping me up. His hand lingers, rough with concern. "They wanted your power to answer." "And it did." I swallow hard, guilt and exhaustion tangling in my chest. "Did we stop it?" "For now," he says, scanning the treeline. "But whatever spoke through that smoke, it knows your name now." The brooch pulses once, faint as a heartbeat in warning. And somewhere beyond the ridge, a howl rises, not wolf, not man, but something in between. The howl echoes through the forest like a memory tearing itself free. For a moment, no one breathes. Then Kael steps in front of me, eyes glowing faint gold in the half-light. "Stay close," he murmurs, and the command is all instinct, no arrogance. Shapes move between the trees, shadows that walk wrong, shoulders too broad, eyes too bright. Not full Lycans. Not human either. The air thickens with the scent of burnt iron. Mara steps into view. Or what's left of her. Her skin gleams like glass stretched thin over flame, veins glowing faintly red beneath. The forest bends away from her presence, leaves curling in fear. She smiles with too many teeth. So the thorn sings again, she says. And the king still keeps his leash loose. Kael's growl is low and dangerous. You were warned, Mara. I was chosen, she corrects, her voice a melody sharpened to a blade. The old world is ending, Kael. No more packs, no more Omegas pretending freedom is theirs. Balance is a lie, and I will prove it. I step forward before I can think, the brooch searing against my palm. Balance isn't a lie, I say. It's a choice. One you forgot how to make. Mara's laughter cuts like frost. And you, little singer, will remind me? I lift the brooch. The thorn flares silver white, brighter than moonlight, filling the clearing. The energy isn't mine alone. I feel Kael's hand steady at my back, his strength flowing like a river into my pulse. Bryn's bow hums with focus. Even the scout's fear feeds the circle. In Turbine, I whisper. The word is no longer foreign. It's a heartbeat. A promise. The light leaps from the thorn and threads through the trees, wrapping around Mara. She thrashes, snarling, but the glow does not burn, it binds. Each flicker stitches her broken halves together, forcing the wolf and woman she tore apart to look at each other again. Her scream shakes the leaves from the branches. Then silence. When the light fades, Mara collapses. Her body shudders once, then stills, not dead, but changed. Human eyes blink open, full of bewildered sorrow. She whispers, "What have I done?" before the forest takes her into its quiet. Kael exhales like he's been holding his breath for years. You mended her, he says softly. No, I answer, voice shaking. She chose to be mended. The brooch dims, its work done. The forest exhales too, the oppressive weight lifting until only dawn remains. Bryn looks around, half laughing, half crying. Well, she says, that's one less apocalypse before breakfast. Kael turns to me, the gold in his eyes gentled to sunlight. What now, Mira of Thornforge? I look toward the horizon, where the first rays spill across the mountains like stitches of light. No, I say. We keep sewing. The world still has holes. He smiles, the kind that belongs to both king and man. Then we'll mend it together. As we walk back toward Northreach, the forest begins to sing, not of fear, but of balance restored. The thorn warms once more against my skin, not with warning this time, but with peace. And for the first time since the blood moon rose, I feel it too. The silence between heartbeats where freedom finally fits.